Alrighty, everybody. This is currently Friday, July 11th, 2025, and I'm coming to educate you. Usually, I come to educate you about complete nonsense. And even if what I'm talking about isn't complete nonsense, the way in which I deliver the information tends to be complete nonsense. But today, I'm going to be providing you guys with valuable information that with enough effort and dedication can be used in anyone's life, I'd say if you have enough dedication, if you have enough love of the game, the information I will be giving to you today will be applicable in your own life. And I think what was it yesterday? I can't fucking remember. I'm so No, it wasn't yesterday. It was Tuesday. On Tuesday, we talked about art a little bit. And art, especially as we talked about a lot of the contemporary modern art, art that's being made by people with PhDs and shit. It's it's interesting. It's fun to think about. It's fun to look at, but it's all kind of complete nonsense. But this is real. All right, what we're talking about today. This is real. This is getting into the nitty-gritty of things. Art is fun. Some people like making art. Some people like me just like looking at art. But this is a little bit more. We're getting into it a little bit, all right? I'm talking soft hands. I'm talking broken or not soft. I'm talking hard hands. I'm talking broke backs, and I'm not talking about the mountain here either. We're talking about people who legitimately have lower back issues from doing manual labor all day, and we're also talking about hard hats as well and very soft penises. Because these guys, the people that are doing this type of work, trust me, I know they have no libido left in their body, right? Because today we're talking about copper. I think the title of this episode is going to be "The Economics of Copper: White Trash Wall Street." Because look, I brought my quant with me today. I brought my quant. His name is Beifong Jie, and not only does he not speak English, this guy doesn't even speak Chinese. He speaks a second, third language that is based entirely on algebra. All right, this is the type of Chinese Asian genius we're talking about here. So I got him sitting in the corner in a little bit of a cuck chair, and I'm gonna be looking at him every once in a while to make sure my numbers are right. I might yell at him every now and then, even though he doesn't understand me. But that's the thing. It doesn't matter if someone speaks English or they speak Chinese or even if they're a dog. Quite frankly, everyone understands anger. And this guy, Beifong Zhang, what did I say his name was? My quant. This guy understands anger better than anyone else, dude. This guy has been beaten with just about every instrument in the book. I'm talking broom handles. I'm talking about rulers. I'm talking about yardsticks. I'm talking about branches from a tree. Frying pans. He is Asian, so he has been beaten, not really with frying pans, but walks. That's what my quant's been getting hit with. But he's gotten hit enough to know when I ask him for the numbers, he better be delivering me the right fucking numbers. All right. And so, the economics of copper, I'll talk about my real world experience with it. I strip copper. Not for a living, right? I don't really have to do anything for a living because I'm a privileged little fat chubby white kid and I live with my parents. But to make money, I guess. It's not, and really no one in the US does anything quote unquote for a living, right? Like everyone likes to act like America doesn't have any social safety nets, social safety nets. That's the right way to put it. Everyone likes to pretend that, dude. But really, like no one starves to death in America. People like to bring up the people who die of malnutrition in America, and the people who are dying of malnutrition in America, I'm sure some of them are starving to death, but that's really because that's not because there's not enough food. There's plenty of food. You can, if you're really fucking starving to death, you could take a quick you could take a quick hop over to 7-Eleven and stuff a fucking bag of Doritos down your pants and walk out real quick. You know what I mean? Or a couple Twinkies, or really whatever you're looking for, and just walk out the store real quick. You do got to be careful because there might be an Indian or a Sikh guy behind the counter, and he might pull out a fucking stick and he might start beating you with it. But the Sikhs at least are pretty understanding. I don't know about the Hindus. The Hindus, they do have a rigid sense of who is low class and who is high class. So they he might beat you with the stick. But if it's a Sikh guy behind the counter, he might be like, "My brother, I will feed you, my brother." But the Indians, they don't play that shit, dude. And also they believe in reincarnation. So it's like I don't think murder is as big a deal to them. I think I think when you believe in reincarnation like that, just killing someone is like, yeah, he'll be back. It'll be I just reset his game real quick. That's all that was. I didn't to them it's I don't know. I'm not Hindu. I've never been Hindu before. I don't really know that much about the core tenets of it. So this might be complete speculation, but I imagine that murder when you 100% believe in reincarnation, I think that murder is just kind of like it's just more of a dickhead thing than it is, the most immoral act possible. I think it's just being a dickhead. I think it's just, dude, it's like when you're playing fucking Fortnite and you come back, you take a piss real quick and you give your boy the controller and you're like, "Yo, keep me alive," and you come back and he fucking, you know what I mean, rush straight at someone to try to fight him real quick. I think that's what murder is like when you believe in reincarnation. It's like, dude, I just spent 20 minutes playing Fortnite and then you ruined the fucking game. I could have won that game. I think that's kind of how they view murder. You know what I mean? It's just you turned off my game. I think that's what it's like, right? Or when you were in high school and you were playing Run 3 on the laptop and your boy came up real quick and he pressed the fucking off button. You were like, "Dude, I almost set the high score." I think that's maybe a little bit more what it's like. But no, no one's really and the people who do die of malnutrition in this country, they typically die of not being underfed, but being overfed with the wrong foods, right? Like Doritos, as delicious as they are, dude, and I this might come as a surprise to all the Americans listening to this, but you can't survive just off Doritos. You know what I mean? And some people think they can, and some people they've gotten close, dude. Some of these people, the diets of some people are shocking to me. Like truly deeply shocking. I don't know if I've ever seen it in person, but it's one of those things you hear about and it's like, yeah, dude, all he eats is junk food. And it's like, how is that guy? I don't care if you're 20 years old and you're in the prime of your life, dude, only eating junk food. You just must you must feel awful all the time, and the reason you probably feel awful all the time is because your body is like incredibly close to death. It's incredibly close to shutting down, right? And that's a lot of the malnutrition deaths in America is people just eating, shit food basically. And I'm not talking about shit food in India, which is actual food made out of human poop. I'm talking about food that's like shit quality. God damn, the Indians are getting it today. I'm saying they're okay with murder and that they eat human shit, but they've been getting it for a while. The Indian subcontinent and really just Indians as a whole, no matter what country they're in, they've been kind of getting it for a while. You know what I mean? The British gave it to them, the Mughals gave it to them, the Pakistan's kind of giving it to them right now. China's been giving it to them a little bit. And I think that's something that flies under the radar a bit. China historically it's kind of complicated, right? Because China's right next to India, but India's separated from China by the Himalayan mountains, which are even now with all the advanced technology we have, they're still pretty hard to cross. Like that's still a natural barrier that exists between the two countries, but they do have a tumultuous relationship, right? Because for some reason, India said "fuck you" to America in like the '70s or whatever, and we just stopped sending them humanitarian aid. And then China sent them humanitarian aid for a little bit, and then China like stole a bunch of land from them. I don't really know, dude. But the Indians, look, all we got to know is that the Indians that they've had a rough go of it, and I think if they just used utensils and stopped shitting in the street, then maybe, the PR would become a little bit better because Hinduism is pretty sick, right? Like those beautiful temples, those monasteries up in the mountains and stuff, that shit is pretty sick. So, I mean, stop throwing all your trash in the street and stop putting all your poop in the street and stop just smelling bad and start using utensils. And I think the PR around Indians will calm down a little bit. But look, they're not the focus of the day. Somehow they always come up, and I'm sure I'll talk about the Jews at some point. But today's episode is about copper, and I do have a bit of personal experience with it. Like I said, I strip industrial commercial copper, scrap copper. I'm not stealing it from the job site. I don't got balls like that. It's every time you hear about like, oh, this crackhead stole fucking half a ton of copper wire from the place. I'm like, dude, that's impressive because I'm lugging around these buckets of copper. Like a 5-gallon bucket of copper can weigh 100 pounds. Like seriously, like if you pack that shit tight with copper, that shit can weigh 100 pounds. And so I'm like, hey, if you steal half a ton of copper wire by hand, right? If you're a crackhead or whatever, or a meth head, or whatever type of head is out there, then I think you deserve it a little bit, right? Because I know from personal experience how hard that shit is. And copper, when you steal it from a job site, right? Like some of these crackheads do, which I'm not personally doing. I'm just taking the scraps, just the little shit, and even the scraps are worth a lot of money. But when you steal copper wire from a job site, right? Or when it comes from a job site, right? Like when I get it from the job site, it's insulated. And most people have seen copper wire in their life, and it's not just straight up copper. It's surrounded by a plastic or a rubber sheathing, right? And that rubber sheathing dramatically reduces the price of it because it's, especially for thin wire, for thin copper wire, that sheathing is really hard to get off. It's a very tedious process to remove that wire or to remove that sheathing, that insulation from the wire. And that reduces the price of it. So you're going to want to strip it. But like I said, the super thin copper wire, it's there's not a ton of machines out there that are affordable for like an everyday person like me to have that strip super thin copper wire. And so that stuff, you just got to let that go. Like thin copper wire, you just got to be like, "Hey, I'm going to sell it to the scrapyard with the insulation on it just because it's not worth my time to take it off." But some of the thicker stuff, right? And this stuff, I'm talking industrial strength copper wire. This is we got volts running through this. This is the type of shit, this ain't fucking Charlie Chaplin when he grabs the wire and he just shakes and you see a skeleton real quick. This the amount of voltage that goes through this copper wire literally blows your body apart. This is a thing. Like look up copper, I don't know what it's called, but it looks like a fucking hazmat suit. And that's what these dudes wear when they're like working with this super fucking high voltage copper wire, right? And it's very thick. It's it's about the girth of a soft penis. That's about how thick it is. It's about, you know, everyone's hands are different size. I'm pretty short. I have pretty small hands, but and I also have a pretty small penis. maybe it's maybe it's about let's just go. Let's be honest. I'll be honest with myself here for a second. It's probably about the thickness of half the average soft penis. Like that's the thickness of this copper wire that I'm stripping personally. And that thickness is pretty easy to strip, right? You can get machines that do it. You still have to feed it through and stuff. It doesn't, you don't just put it in there and it goes through. You have to like feed it through and the gears pull it through and a blade at the top strips the insulation off of it, right? So that you can peel it off and then throw the copper in there. And just doing that increases the price of the copper by at least $1 to $1.20 per pound, right? And so that's what you're going to want to do. If you're thinking about getting in the copper game, which look, the economy doesn't look like it's getting any better, right? So this is probably some pretty useful advice for the people out there. Try to get as thick a copper wire as you can and strip it. And another thing you're going to want to look out for is SO wire. SO wire it's essentially a thick tube of copper or a thick tube, right? But there's multiple strands of copper running through there, multiple separate strands, and each one of those different strands have insulation around them. So they're pretty much, you know what I mean? You can still get some money out of there, but you're not going to be wanting to do that. You're going to want to get the shit where it's just insulation and then on the inside is copper. That's what you're going to want to be looking for, all right? When you're high on meth, and this may be difficult if you're high on meth, but you know what I mean? You took a couple toots of some meth and you're like, I need some money because meth rules and I need more meth. So you head over to a job site real quick and you start scrounging around, on the ground looking for copper wire. I would say the thin shit is kind of worth taking. Ignore the SO completely. Ignore the SO wire. Fuck it. It's not worth your time. But if you find some nice thick shit in there, you know what I mean? If it feels like you're a if it feels like you're Piper Perry grabbing onto a nice thick BBC dirt of gangbang, that's what you want. That's the type of copper wire you want. And so you essentially strip it, bring it to the scrapyard, and at the scrapyard, they're not giving you the price of the copper, right? And this is something I wanted to talk about real quick. So due to Trump's tariffs and all that, the price of copper has skyrocketed. And my quant, obviously he doesn't speak fucking English because he's Chinese and he's a genius. And so he drew me up this chart real quick, and this chart just so happens to be on tradingeconomics.com, and this is the copper section of tradingeconomics.com. We got a nice little chart that we can look at over time. And so right now, over the past about week, the price of copper has skyrocketed from about $5, oh shit, about $5 even to now we're looking at about, well, that's not correct, to about $5.50 a pound. That's how much the price of copper has increased. Went from about $5 even, yeah, to about 5.50 for per pound over the course of the last week due to tariffs imposed by Donald Trump, who unfortunately, got to give the libs a little bit of credit here after finding out about the whole birthright thing, is kind of a fascist. But look, he's a fascist that's increasing the price of copper, so fine by me. 100% fine by me. Even if the big H man, right? Like if I was living in Germany, living the same life I do now, but in Germany, in the 1930s and 40s, and they were like, it's all our Jewish neighbors are disappearing and Adolf's saying some weird stuff. And I'd be like, I mean, I get it, dude. I get the Jays are disappeared. I get he's taking them, putting them in Camp Mystic somewhere. I get that he's doing that. But I mean, the price of copper is skyrocketing right now, so I don't really care. So yeah, it has increased a lot. And just for reference, about the time that he entered office, it was we're looking at about $4.20 per pound when Trump entered office. And there's been some spikes here and there. It's dipped down to, let's check, about $4 again. But really, it's only gone up since Donald Trump has been in office and since he's been implementing these tariffs. I don't know what the fuck happened in, what would that be, April? But April 8th, the price of copper dipped dramatically. I don't know why the fuck that happened. Maybe a tariff ended then, and then Donald Trump was like, fuck, I forgot that tariff ended. Now I got to implement a new one. But it's pretty much been going up since Donnie T's been in office. And look, hey, I get it. He's deporting a lot of people. He made a medieval prison surrounded by alligators. Yeah, I get that he's doing that. I get that he's trying to, fundamentally change the Constitution, but I'm just looking at the price of copper and it's only been going up. And another thing about stripping copper wire, it kind of sounds easy, right? Especially if you have a machine that cuts it for you. But man, that shit is not easy, dude. My hands. I've never done meth before, right? I don't think I would enjoy it. Never done it before. Never done crack, although I do think I would enjoy that one maybe a little bit more. But my hands, they do look like I've indulged in some in some chemical stimulants, you know, just because of when you push it through the machine, you have to push it with the palm of your hand. And if you're dealing with the type of scrap that I am, which is short little pieces, the pieces they have little bits of copper sticking out of them essentially, right? And that cuts the fuck out of your hand, cuts the fuck out of your fingernails. It fucks your hands, I mean, all the way up. The only thing preventing me from looking like an active meth addict is my face, and even that's pretty fucking close. Even that's not far off from what the average meth addict's face looks like. But it's not skinny enough, right? Like that's the thing that's saving me. I think, I've been trying to lose weight, but I think if I'm going to be stripping copper wire to make money, I think I'm just going to have to stay fat just so people don't think I'm on meth. I think it's what it is. It's what I'm going to have to do. But and yeah, like I said, over the course of the last week, it is the price has just skyrocketed. And 50 cents doesn't seem like a whole lot, to the average person, but when you're dealing with like a literal ton of copper wire, that's an extra $1,000, right? And a ton is it's not that much when we're talking about copper wire, especially like some of these big job sites out there, like factories and shit like that. For a house, yeah, a ton of scrap copper from a house is like a lot. But for a big, factory or warehouse or whatever the fuck somewhere, a ton really isn't that much. These buildings have a lot of wiring in them, a lot of high voltage wiring in them. And so, yeah, 50 cents, that's a very big jump. But like I said, at the scrapyard, you're really not getting that much money. So a typical scrapyard will make about 15 to 30%, um, if they do one very important step. And that important step is melting down the copper into ingots, right? And I don't know how many scrap places do this. I don't know if the scrap place that I go personally, I don't know if they do that there, but that does massively increase the price of it for some reason, right? Because when you melt it into ingots, you have to clean it first, right? Because copper wire can have some oxidation, which is rust. I don't I don't know why they don't call it rust. They call it oxidation, but it can have that oxidation, right? That kind of makes it the color of the Statue of Liberty. And washing that, you need to wash that off before you smelt it, right? Because if you don't, then there's going to be a ton of impurities in there, and that's just like a hassle to get out, right? You can't just grab a ladle real quick and scoop out the impurities out of boiling copper, right? Because it's boiling liquid metal, so it's pretty tough to get out of there. But if you do that, then that massively increases your profit margins, because I guess ingots are more valuable than just little pieces. But if you're lazy and you're like, dude, I don't want to be smelting shit, dude. This isn't fucking Minecraft. I don't want to have to craft a furnace out of cobblestone right now. I don't want to have to smelt the copper wire. Your profits are probably going to go down to about it's kind of hard to tell, right? Like I said, 15 to 30%. That's a pretty big number we're talking about here, or a pretty big variation between your profits, especially for a very big scrapyard. But they're going to be going down significantly, right? Because you sell it off to some place, and then that place, they have to clean it, and they have to smelt it down into ingots before it can be resold. And those ingots that are resold, those are the things that are worth $5.50, right? Because those are more usable. They're more workable, right? Like I'm saying, I strip scrap copper. It's just short little pieces of copper, and that's not usable at that point. But I guess for some reason, an ingot is way more usable in terms of making new copper. And that's what it is, right? You're recycling the copper, and you can recycle anything, right? Like you look at the aluminum cans or the plastic bottles or whatever, and it's like, oh, you get 5 cents back if you recycle it. Same with those glass bottles and shit like that. But those really aren't worth recycling. Copper really is, because even if you're just base level, just selling little fucking pieces of it to a scrapyard, you're still getting, like today, we went in, we took a whole bunch. The amount that we got was $4.05 a pound. So about $1.50 less than probably what they're going to sell it for if they smelt it down. But like I said, I don't know if this place that we go to smelts it down. But we're not getting in. We're not. I'm assuming that most people listening to this, they're not going to be able to buy a big ass furnace. I'm assuming you're just going to be stripping it and selling it to someplace, and you're going to be stealing it a little bit. You're gonna be, if you don't have the hookup right, you're probably gonna have to steal it, right? So, but I don't know. Maybe there's a way. Maybe there's a way where you can game the system somehow, and you can buy it like in bulk and then strip it and then sell it to the scrapyard and make just a little bit of money. But copper is very valuable, and I do have a list of the most valuable metals in terms of metals that are used, in industrial settings, right? Or everyday settings, right? Like gold and silver. Yeah, there's some gold in like electronics and stuff like that, but there's really not that much. So I got a top 10 list for you here, and copper copper's at the very bottom of this list, and I'm going to explain this a little bit. So at number 1 we have rhodium, which is about $450,000 to $500,000 per kilogram. And a kilogram, it's about 2.25 pounds, just 2.25 pounds. It's not that exactly, but let's just say that's what it is. So let's chop that number in half. So it's about $250,000 a pound. And this is used in catalytic converters. So whenever you see, a crackhead walking around with a Sawzall or an angle grinder or some shit looking for cars, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for catalytic converters, which rhodium can be extracted from there. And obviously there's not a kilogram or even a pound, or it's probably not even like 1% of a pound, right? It's probably not even an ounce of rhodium in these catalytic converters, but it's still very, very, very expensive. And then next on the list, we have iridium. And iridium is about $150,000 to $160,000 per kilogram. And this is used in electronics, spark plugs, and crucibles. And a crucible is a thing you use to melt metal. And yeah, so that's also very, very expensive. Fuck it, I'm just gonna focus on the things that people have heard about. So we have lithium, which is about $70,000 to 100, or not 70,000, 70 to 100,000. Jesus fucking Christ, my brain isn't working. $70 to $100 per kilogram, and it's used in lithium ion batteries. And then and most people have heard about that in regards to the Congo, which that's just a whole thing in and of itself. And also cobalt, that's another one that people have heard of, and that's about $25 to $30 per kilogram, and that's also used in lithium ion batteries and super alloys, which we're not going to talk about. And now we're getting into a little bit of cheap territory, right? We got nickel, which is about $18 to $20 per kilogram, used in stainless steel and EV batteries. And then we have titanium. You know, I feel like you hear about titanium. When I was a kid, for some reason, I was super hyped up on titanium. I don't know what it was, but it's yeah, it's like one of those things when you're a kid, right? When you hear about like quicksand or whatever, and you're just like thinking about quicksand all the time. When in reality, it's it's super rare and it's also just not that dangerous. But when I was a kid, I was obsessed with titanium. I was like, dude, do you guys know how fucking hard and strong titanium is? I was like, I was just obsessed with titanium when I was a kid. That was my quicksand. I just loved it, and that's about $5 to $8 per kilogram, and that's used in aerospace and medical implants. Those are the two biggest uses of it. And now we're on to number 10, which is copper, which is $8 to $10 per kilogram, and that's used in electrical wiring, renewable energy systems. The main thing it's used for is electrical wiring. And all of these metals here that I just talked about, these are all super super common, but copper is by far the most common. It's literally any building or house you walk into in America. I think it should be specified. Any place where there's electricity, that means there's copper there. And so copper is some people do use aluminum wiring, but copper is the big one. And so copper is definitely the most common of all of these, right? Like no one's no one's getting like a half ton of titanium by stealing their grandma's fucking hip replacement, right? I don't know. Maybe you are. But me personally, I'm not doing that. I'm just getting little scraps from a job site. And so, copper, it's probably the best one to focus on with all of these because you might think steel and aluminum and shit like that. You might think that's maybe something you should be focusing on here. But those really they're incredibly cheap. So, for example, like I said, copper is about $5 to $10 per kilogram. It varies a little bit, but right now it's really expensive. And so iron or steel is about 1 to 2 cents per kilogram. And so that's super duper cheap. So maybe you're thinking, okay, I'll go with aluminum. You can't be going with aluminum either because that's only $2 to $3 per kilogram. We're talking, I mean, 5 times less than copper's worth. In the scrapyard I go to, I think they accept like iron and steel and stuff like that, and they also accept aluminum. But it's just not worth that much, right? So when we go up there, we fill up the truck bed real quick, drive up there and sell it. And usually depending on how much you have, you're getting a few $1,000s out of that. But if you filled up that same truck bed with aluminum or whatever, you're looking at hundreds of dollars. You're not looking at the same type of money. And so you know, let's just say for example, you got a PhD in gender studies and shockingly that is not paying the bills. So you got to look for other avenues. And you're doing Uber Eats and fucking DoorDash and shit like that and you're doing a little bit of Amazon delivery on the side and you're still not making that much money. I would say turn to copper. Don't get greedy with it. Like I said, I've talked about this before. You just got to steal it quietly. You just got to like find an electrician or some dude who works in construction and be like, yo, just fucking hook me up with a little bit of that. I'll give you the money that I make from stripping it. I would say that's the best that's the best path to take at this point in life for a lot of people. And that's the crazy thing. That's the crazy thing about America right now is that's not even the worst. That's it gets so much worse than that, dude. And unfortunately, I am not a hot woman, so I can't sell pictures of my asshole on OnlyFans. But I still think I would rather strip copper wire than do that, dude. Because, I mean, when you're selling pictures of your asshole on OnlyFans, you got to worry about angles and lighting and shit like that. I got hemorrhoids, all right? You got to do some upkeep on your asshole if you're going to be selling pics on OnlyFans. So I think for most people, copper is going to be the most valuable side hustle. And this is how you know. I'm for the people. All right. I could have kept this little business, I could have kept it a little bit private, could have kept people thinking that it's just crackheads stealing wire out of people's houses, and I could have shut up about it. All right. But I'm not gonna because it is the ultimate, right? Look, I know catalytic converters, you're gonna be stealing off people's cars and shit like that, and you don't wanna be doing that. That's just dickhead shit, right? But copper, you take a little bit of that from the job site, no one's gonna really miss it, right? It's the company's fucking paying for it anyway, and so I think that's what you're gonna be needing to do. I'm not gonna be doing that because I don't wanna go to jail, so I'm gonna get mine through more legal means, but if you wanna get it through a little gray area, I don't think there's a problem there. And so I do think that is the best way to do it. And I have all these tabs pulled up and I basically already explained everything. I explained how all of it works. But yeah, copper is the future. You know, if you want to the days of collecting aluminum cans and glass bottles, that's over. You know, the economy, inflation, you're not going to be able to pay your rent with that. But if you pull up on a fucking job site and you see a big old spool of copper wire and you just want to throw that in the back of the truck real quick, hey, it might be worth it. Might be worth it. Or there's all these abandoned houses and shit in Detroit and all that no one's using. Hey, just roll in there real quick and be like, "Is there any copper in here?" you know. Uh, but yeah, the business of it. We got to talk about the business side of it a little bit more. I know everyone likes talking about the money, but now we're going to be talking a little bit more about the manual labor of it. And you got options here, right? You got options. Some of them are more preferable to others. They're a little bit better than some of the other options, but bottom line, you're going to want to be stripping it, right? Unless you're getting like super thin copper wire, I would say anything less than about 7 millimeters, you're going to be, that's going to be a difficult task to strip anything smaller than 7 millimeters. So I would say look around, they sell it on the TikTok shop, these thick strippers or these strippers that you can use for thicker copper wire, and you're going to want to find one of those and just strip as much as you can and wait for prices to peak. That's the most important part here. All right, I got me and my quant, we're watching the charts. All right, we're seeing what's going up, what's going down, and we're deciding when to make our money moves. And I don't even pay my quant with money, I pay him in copper, because that little motherfucker, that Chinese motherfucker, he knows the value of copper wire. And so you're going to want to be stripping it. And stripping it, you got a couple options. You could just buy a regular schmegular, one of those strippers, and you basically attach a drill to it and it pulls it through and the thing on the top cuts it. But the thing about that is you can only use it for thick pieces of copper or thick pieces of wire, and you can only use it for round pieces of wire. Because like I'm talking about here, I'm assuming most of the people, you're not going to be getting it through legal means. You're going to be tearing it out of the walls of an abandoned house, right? Like that's how you're going to be getting it. And the stuff in houses is not the same as the industrial stuff. The stuff in houses is what they call Romex. And Romex it's more of a square shape. It's a flat square shape. And that you can't really run it through the cheaper strippers. You're going to have to be investing in something that's a little bit better. And the cheaper strippers that you can use for the thick round stuff, depending on what you get, it's going to run you around $20-$30. If you get one with a motor on it, you're looking more at like $100. But if you're stealing Romex out of walls, which hey, I'm not judging anyone, unless you're using it on meth, I don't think it's the end of the world. But if you're stealing Romex out of walls, you're gonna want to invest in something that strips Romex specifically. And I don't know if there's any Romex specific strippers. I really don't think there is. So you're gonna want to get one that has multiple different sizes that you can use, right? And those types of strippers usually run you around, it can kind of depend, but you're looking at least $200 from one of those strippers from the TikTok shop, which you're probably not even going to get it. So I would say look for a slightly more reputable source. But yeah, copper's lucrative. It's worth a lot. And I don't even know if I'm going to put this podcast out. I think I will, but it's a short one, just a nice little talking about copper a little bit. Yeah, and it was kind of unintelligible, but look, it is what it is. All right, I really have nothing else to talk about here. So I just wanted to talk about copper a little bit. It's been my life for basically this entire summer, is just me stripping copper wire. And another thing you have to worry about when you're stripping copper wire is the mental side of it. And mentally, it's not the most strenuous thing, right? It's not like you're doing brain surgery. It's not like you have someone's life in your hand. But when you do that shit, when it's just the same repetitive task all day, I'm getting a little bit of an insight into how, the children in Chinese sweatshops feel. because it's just the same repetitive task all day. You just adjust you adjust the stripper and then you just run the copper wire through it. And when you do that, for the most I've ever done it for was maybe like 10 hours in a day. When you do that, you close your eyes and you just see bundles of copper. That's all you see. Look, when you're closing your eyes, you could be seeing worse things, right? Like if you served in Iraq or Afghanistan or some shit like that, when you close your eyes, you could be seeing like the bloody bodies of children. So it's not the worst thing to be seeing. But I'm just going to warn you that's what's going to be happening. And another thing that's going to happen is every single piece of wire that you see, you're just going to like automatically your brain's going to be like you got to pick that shit up and strip it real quick. Right? Because that's what you've been doing for the last 10 hours of the day, right? Your brain's just going to automatically be in that mode of wire that needs to be stripped. So it is a little bit, I do think that's what being on meth or crack feels like a little bit, where it's just your brain is just, it's going haywire. So I'd say take some breaks, listen to some podcasts, maybe listen to this one. Hey, maybe you got your inspiration and now you got something to do while you're stripping the copper wire. But that's important, right? And this applies to people in war too. If you're in an active war zone, I'd just say throw on some Rogan or something real quick. Just get your brain off what you're doing. And so, yeah, those are my tips and tricks for stripping copper wire. You don't want to be selling it unstripped, especially if it's some nice thick stuff. If it's just like little fucking shitty wire, yeah, sell that shit. It's not going to be worth your time. You're going to be using a box cutter or a razor or some shit like that, and you're going to be cutting up yourself, right? You're going to be you're going to be looking like a 14-year-old that's looking for a little bit of attention. That's what you're gonna be looking like if you're trying to use a box cutter to strip thin wire. And another thing you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to wear gloves sometimes. It's hard to tell, right? It's as a professional, as someone who's been doing this for a little bit, I could tell you the situations where you want to be wearing gloves and the situations where you don't. When you're just running it through the stripper, you don't want to be wearing gloves, right? And like I said, it damages your hands a little bit. But the reason you don't want to wear gloves is because you're gonna be you're gonna have to pick it up. It's pretty slippery, right? Like that thick copper wire. It has like a special coating on it that makes it slippery, and it's like easier to run and like thread through the building that you're making. And so it's a little bit slippery. So you can't be wearing gloves when you're doing that, right? But when you're picking up like a big bundle of stripped copper wire, especially if you ran it through the stripper, you're gonna want to be wearing gloves. And the reason for that is the blade on the top, it doesn't you have to adjust it yourself, right? And sometimes you adjust it a little too far down and it basically makes like these little shards of copper that get into your hand, and that shit's the most annoying thing in the world. I got one in my foot one time. I still don't think it's out. I think it's just part of my body now. I think it's just in me now, dude. I'm basically an Iraq veteran. I basically have a fucking bullet in my leg that I just can't get out. That's how I feel, dude. And there's no union. You can't be making a union when you're stripping copper wire for a living. But it is very very lucrative, right? Especially if you can get just like scrap shit, right? The shit that's not even worth the company's time to recycle, right? Like that's how I get it. It's just not worth the company's time to recycle the copper wire that I'm getting because it's in such small pieces and it costs money to, truck it out and bring it to the fucking to the scrap yard, and they're not going to be having anyone strip it, so they're selling it unstripped with the insulation on it, so they're only getting $2.60 per pound, maybe at the most $3 if they're bringing in a whole fucking truckload of it. But it's really just not worth that much money. So if you can get it, maybe not for free, but if you can get it on the low, strip it real quick, take that insulation off, and then you have a bunch of plastic. And I don't know what you're going to do with the plastic, but you guys are smart, so I'm sure you can figure something out. I'm sure you can figure it out. And the other thing is that plastic does weigh a fair bit. They don't under you fill up like a contractor bag full of that plastic. That shit weighs like 80 pounds. It fucking weighs. It weighs a lot. And so yeah, those are my tips and tricks for stripping copper wire. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it. But yeah, copper business is pretty lucrative, right? $4 a pound. It doesn't seem like that much, especially for a lot of these people that are on salary, right? Where it's just like I get $100,000 from my company. Why would I worry about copper wire? But hey, man, it's pretty lucrative. All right, I'm going into Joe Biden a little bit here. It's lucrative, folks. You can make a lot of money. You look like a crackhead, but you make a lot of money. And sometimes, that's just a general rule of life that you have to accept sometimes. Sometimes you have to accept the fact that you're gonna look like a moron, right? Or a crackhead. It's the truth of the situation. If you want to make dumb money like that, you, you're gonna be looking like a crackhead at some point, right? Like even if you're on Wall Street, these dudes on Wall Street, they're out here working like 12 hours a day, waking up at like 6 in the morning, checking the markets and all that shit. They're staring at a blue screen all day. Their eyes are fucking bloodshot and baggy, and they're emaciated because they just work all day. But they make a fuck ton of money. So I think that's just a general rule for life. If you want to make a whole ton of money, you're gonna look like a crackhead at one point or another. Eventually, the hope is that you reach a point where you don't have to look like a crackhead, but it's gonna be a while. It's we're talking we're talking years here that you're gonna be looking like a crackhead. And it is what it is, dude. You're gonna have to accept it at this point, dude. There's not a lot of people that can afford the luxury of not wanting to look like a crackhead. There's not a lot of people like that in this country. Most most people in this country, you're just gonna have to look like you smoke a little bit out of a broken light bulb, right? You're just gonna have to look like that at one point or another, and that's okay, dude. It's the reality of the situation. Or you can move into the woods and start sending bombs to fucking Jeff Bezos or whatever. You could become a little bit of a Ted K if that's what you choose to do. Or you can strip copper wire for a living and just kind of be an asshole, which is what I'm choosing to do. That's that's the course I've taken in life. But like I said, the downside of it is you're just going to be looking at wire all the time, and you're going to be like, I need to strip that, right? Because that's just what you do all day. You're going to be looking at like extension cords or your fucking phone cord or whatever, being like, all right, I got to take this to the stripper real quick, but you got to turn that part of your brain off. All right. It's almost like getting rid of PTSD. You might have to go to a fucking doctor and get a little bit of ketamine therapy, or you might have to go down to the fucking Amazonian rainforest and take some ayahuasca to get the fucking copper wire out of your mind. Okay, it's a little bit like PTSD, but hey, I'd say it's worth it, dude. I'd say it's worth it for sure. So, but anyway, nice short episode here, nice 42-minute thing. No one's probably gonna listen to it. They're probably gonna hear that first shitty joke I told about the quant, and they're just gonna stop listening to it. But hey, anyone that does listen to it, they're probably not going to make any money because they don't have, the courage of a crackhead to go to a construction site and just start fucking taking naked copper wire. But if you do have the massive balls that it seems like all crack and meth heads have, you're going to be making a little bit of money. And I hope it goes well for you. But that's all I've got for this episode, guys. Nice little short thing. Just a nice little talking about my own personal experiences with it. Look, maybe you find it a better way. And if you do, you better fucking tell me. All right? Because I introduced you to this business in the first place. But aside from that, hope you have a good day, good week, good year, good life. Hope you have a fun time stripping copper wire. Hope you get rid of that fucking shitty ass Uber Eats side gig you have going on, and you start hitting the fucking construction sites, scrounging around on the floor, looking for wire. But yeah, that's all I've got. See you guys on Monday. Peace.